So this all started last summer when I moved into a new apartment. I was fresh out of a breakup, ready to start over, and I found this decent two-bedroom in a mid-sized city. The building was old enough to have charm, but not so old that it was falling apart. Thin walls, though, that part becomes important. My second day there, I ran into my neighbor across the hall while trying to bring up a box of kitchen crap. He saw me struggling and offered to help. Let's call him Dan. Dan looked like he peaked in 2014 at a startup party. Mid-40s, thinning hair slicked back, Patagonia vest in 90-degree heat. Friendly vibe, though. The type that makes you guess if he's a low-key millionaire or still lives off his mom's inheritance. Anyway, he grabs one side of the box, helps me get it inside, and while setting it down, he notices my tattoo, a fairly simple one on my forearm. He says, "Cool ink. I got a story." Me, trying to be vaguely deep but breezy, say something like, "Yeah, I got it after a rough year." Kind of healing thing, you know? Big mistake. His eyes light up, like full-on sparkle mode. He goes, "Man, I totally get that. I've been doing a lot of inner work myself lately." Before I can nod and close the door, this man, who I just met, walks into my apartment. Casually, like we're old friends. He sits down on one of my still unwrapped IKEA chairs and starts unloading. And I mean unloading. About his ex-fiancée, about their breakup, about how she weaponized astrology and once threw a succulent at him during couples therapy. About how traditional therapy never worked for him because therapists are just paid actors. I'm standing there holding a roll of paper towels like it's a weapon. I should have said something. I should have set a boundary. Instead, I offered him a LaCroix. He stayed for 45 minutes, just monologuing. I said maybe 4 words total. And as he stood up to leave, he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You really listen. Like, no one does that for me. Thank you, man." He clapped me on the shoulder and left. I thought, weird guy. Hopefully that was a one-time thing. Spoiler, it was not. The next Tuesday, exactly at 7 p.m., there's a knock on my door. I open it, and of course it's Dan. He's holding a bottle of Pinot Noir and wearing the exact same expression as last week, like we'd scheduled this. He goes, "Hope you don't mind. I just felt like we had a breakthrough last time. Thought we could pick it back up." I froze for a second. My brain said, just say no, man. But my mouth, fueled by social anxiety and years of conflict avoidance, said, "Yeah, sure." Mistake number 2. Dan walks right in, places the wine on my barely used kitchen counter, flops onto the couch, and starts talking. This time, he's ranting about a girl he met in a yoga class who told him his heart chakra is blocked by unresolved maternal tension. I have no idea what that means, but I nod. A lot. We sit there for 2 hours. He talks. I sip LaCroix and throw in vague affirmations like, "Wow, that sounds heavy." Or, "Have you tried journaling about it?" At one point, he actually says, "You're seriously better than any therapist I've had. You just get it." And then it becomes a thing. Every Tuesday, 7 p.m., Dan shows up with Pinot Noir and a new existential meltdown. He starts calling it our sessions, like we're in some indie film about a reclusive therapist and his unpredictable patient. Except I didn't sign up for this, I don't get paid, and I'm too polite to make it stop. It gets weirder. One week, he tells me he's considering celibacy because sex distracts him from his spiritual path. The next, he's asking if his Tinder bio should say sapiosexual or emotionally available, but astrologically unavailable. He brings snacks. He starts rating the wines he brings. One week he asks if he can just lie down while we talk. He does. It's not that I want this to keep happening, but by now, I'm weirdly invested. Dan is like my own private reality show. I know everything about his childhood trauma, his gut health journey, his therapist beef, his Enneagram type, he's a 4 with a 5 wing, and the exact moment he realized he had shadow father issues. 6 Tuesdays in, he shows up with candles. I feel like ambience really helps me open up. He says, lighting one. I didn't stop him, but this time, when I opened the door, Dan wasn't alone. Standing next to him was a woman I'd never seen before. Curly hair, flowy dress, a huge crystal necklace. Dan beamed and said, "This is Callie, my girlfriend. I've told her everything about you." Callie hugged me. Without asking, she said, "I knew you'd be a Cancer moon. You radiate nurturing energy." I didn't even know what that meant. I just said, "Thank you," and slowly backed up into my apartment like a confused NPC. They came in, sat on the couch, opened a bottle of wine, like this was normal. Dan goes, "We were hoping we could talk through something with you." Together. I was like, wait, is this couple's therapy? Why am I suddenly the mediator in a relationship I didn't even know existed an hour ago? Callie started talking about how Dan wasn't honoring her boundaries around moon phases. Dan countered with, "You said we're energetically aligned, but you still won't move in." They were going at it. An MY apartment, on MY couch, using MY free therapy they never asked for in the first place. At some point, Callie starts crying. Then Dan starts crying. Then they both hold hands and look at me like I'm supposed to say something profound. I panic and say, "Relationships are like plants. You have to water them, but not drown them." Callie gasped like I just quoted a sacred text. Dan wiped a tear and whispered, "That's beautiful." And then, as I'm thinking, wow, I can't believe I survived this insanity, Dan turns to me and says, "We want you to officiate our wedding." I actually laughed. Big mistake. They weren't joking. I kept waiting for them to say, "Just kidding." They never did. Dan and Callie were dead serious about me officiating their wedding. Apparently, they didn't believe in traditional legal contracts and were opting for what Callie called a spiritual binding ceremony under the eyes of Gaia. I told them multiple times that I'm not ordained. Callie smiled and said, "That's okay. Your presence is ordained by the universe." What do you even say to that? 2 weeks later, I'm standing in a forest preserve an hour outside the city. Everyone's in some version of elfcore. Lots of capes, antler headbands. Callie's wearing a mossy green dress and barefoot. Dan's in linen pants and a leather satchel. I'm in khakis and a mild panic attack. They handed me a script, which they wrote. It included a section where I had to say, "Under the sacred light of the twin moons of our hearts, I now unite these souls in eternal vibration." There was only one moon that night. Just saying. I somehow get through the ceremony. I light a bundle of sage. I say the things. I don't explode from cringe. Dun yes. Callie hums. A guy with a didgeridoo plays softly in the background. And then, during the vows, Dan says, "I wouldn't be here without you, Josh. You helped me find myself again. You healed me." Everyone turns to look at me. Someone claps. Someone else yells, "Therapist of the Year." I fake laugh. My soul leaves my body. Afterwards, at the reception, picnic blankets and gluten-free cupcakes, people start coming up to me, asking what kind of therapy I practice, if I do sliding scale, if I take couples. One woman literally says, "My cousin's going through a dark night of the soul. You'd be perfect for her." I try to explain I'm not a therapist. And then I hear it. Wait, what? It's Dan, standing behind me, holding a compostable wine cup, looking pale. "You're not licensed?" I say, "No, man. I work in marketing." "I thought you knew that." His face breaks, like I told him Santa died. Dan looked like I had just stabbed him with a crystal. He blinked a few times, mouth slightly open, then whispered, "You're not a therapist?" I said, "No, dude. I work in digital marketing. You literally helped me carry my air fryer into my apartment." He didn't respond. He just walked away, left his own wedding reception, into the woods. No juice. Callie tried to play it off like it was part of his journey, but I could tell she was pissed. A week later, the apartment across from mine went dark. Dan was gone. No note. No texts. Just vanished. Callie DM'd me once, literally once, to say, "Dan and I are taking space. Also, do you happen to have a real therapist recommendation?" I sent her a link to Psychology Today and blocked her immediately after. I thought it was over. But then, 2 months later, I got tagged in a TikTok. It was a video from the wedding. Someone filmed me standing in front of them with sage, saying the moon thing. Caption: "Sparkles our forest wedding with our spiritual therapist Greenheart Deerman Mage Sparkles." It went viral. Like 2.6 million views viral. Now people are following me on Instagram, DMing me asking if I specialize in relationship work. I've gotten Venmo tips from strangers. One woman sent me her entire birth chart and asked for a session. I've gone from fake neighbor therapist to full-blown TikTok therapy mystic. My roommate thinks I should monetize it. I told him I'd rather walk into the sea. But every Tuesday at 7 p.m., I still pause. half expecting a knock, a bottle of Pinot, and Dan, ready to talk about his mother again.